In fact, ecology is the study of ecosystems. And so what are ecosystems? Well, ecosystems are the biotic, the living, and the abiotic. And so as you're going through this week, make sure you're looking for the biotic, the living, and the abiotic, the non-living, and how they interact with each other. So when you're thinking about ecosystems, you usually have populations, which are a group of species. You have multiple populations that work together or interact with each other inside of an ecosystem. When you have a group of populations interacting with each other, we call that a community. Okay, so we have a population at one level, which is all the same species. We have a community, which is a group of species, so several populations interacting with each other. And then we have an ecosystem, which are all of these different populations interacting with each other and their non-living environment, so the non-living aspect of it. So that's a really important point when we're thinking about ecology. The other big points about this week are, first of all, interactions between these populations. So things like mutualistic relationships, where both species benefit from some kind of relationship. You have predator-prey interactions, where you've obviously got one species that benefits and another that is harmed. You've got commensalism, where one benefits and the other is neither benefited or harmed. And so we've got all these different types of interactions that are taking place. And so please look for those in your reading. Let's see what else is important about this week. So it's also the week where we talk about climate change. So climate change is a controversial topic. Some people have very, very strong feelings on the topic, and some have very extreme feelings on the topic. My feelings. Climate change is one of those things where there's so much evidence to suggest that, at least to some extent, it is true, that I can't ignore that as a scientist. I would have to be blind to the amount of evidence that is there to say that there isn't, and there's just too much of it. To say that, so it's definitely occurring. That's one question. Is it occurring? And yes, there is a global warming taking place. An average temperature of the Earth is increasing slowly. But the second question is how is it being caused? And that question has to do with, are humans the cause of that? Is the burning of fossil fuels truly the cause of that? And that seems to associate quite well with the advent of the automobile and our increased usage of fossil fuels over the last 100 years or so. And so the lines really associate really, really well with each other. The math, so the mathematicians that look at the increase in the CO2 versus the output versus in automobiles, it seems to match really, really well. One of the big arguments against that, though, is that a volcano can very easily put out how much we burn in fossil fuels in a matter of days, and that's true too. Our best scientists say they have taken that into account. Their papers, which are peer-reviewed, which means that other scientists are looking at it, seem to say that it all matches up. And so with that, and having gone through the scientific rigors of publishing a scientific paper myself, and even seeing the influence of climate change in my own research, I tend to see that we are having an impact. Even during 9/11 2001, when they cut off all of airline travel for a couple of days, we could see an adjustment take place just from that experience. And so, yes, I do tend to believe that climate change is occurring. I think there's just way too much evidence to say otherwise. Let's see, what else am I going to talk about? Okay, there are a few things about how populations are distributed out on a landscape. Okay, humans, we like to live together, so our population is what we call clumped. Okay, we all live together. Others are more regular, meaning that uh, there's even spaces in between each individual. And you can see examples of that here in Arizona when you look at, go out to the desert just around campus and look at some of the shrubs that are out there. They purposefully keep all other plants at arm's length, if you will, just so that there's enough water underneath them. And so they have different chemicals that help prevent other plants from coming in underneath them. And so they're very regularly spaced throughout the ecosystem. Other plants are very random in where they are, okay? So there's no rhyme or reason to why they're here versus there and there. And so that we call that random distribution. So we've got clumped distribution, we've got regular distribution, and we've got random distribution. So those are the three types of distributions. Then when we talk about population growth, we talk about, so for the most of human history, the population existed at a couple 100 million individuals. But as at the advent of farming and domestication of animals, and then advent of medicine and the industrial evolution, it made it so that the available resources to us had increased, and that our life expectancy could also increase. And as a result, we had a population that was kind of just flatlined, but all of a sudden it started to rise with the advent of all of these things. And before long, our population curve looks like it's going straight up, and we call that a exponential curve. Okay, where it just flatlines, and all of a sudden it increases and goes almost straight up. And so our population is increasing at an ever increasing rate, and it's almost exponentially increasing year after year. Our current population, which is at about 7 billion, is expected to double in 50 years. Now, how much can the Earth hold is the question. And many scientists say 9 billion, 11 billion, even 13 billion. But that's what our scientists say are the available resources of this planet can hold. Do we really know that that's the case? Nope, because we've never been there. It could be that we'll come up with some other magical miraculous discovery and make it so that there are even more resources available and even more people can live on the Earth. We don't know that that will happen. We don't know that it won't happen. But currently we seem to think, 11 billion is the carrying capacity of the Earth. So you'll see that word carrying capacity in your reading. Please look for that. Just remember that it signifies the total amount an ecosystem can hold a total amount or total number of individuals of a species. And so we're approaching that carrying capacity really rather quickly. So if our population doubles over the next 50 years, then sometime in the next 50 years, we should hit that carrying capacity. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And somewhat concerning, I'm sure. All right, so if you have any other questions, please contact me. I am more than happy to talk with you. Tomorrow, I will have a live final exam study review. And then next Monday, I will also have one. Tomorrow's is at 10 a.m. I will record that and post it for those of you who can't make it. Next week's is on next Monday. It's going to be at 3:30, I believe. Look at Web Study. I posted the time on there. I believe it's at 3 or 3:30. And we will have an exam study review. Be sure to send me any messages. Some of you use the Remind app very easily, and you just text me a question, and I respond as soon as I can. Feel free to do so. As far as studying for the exam, I posted a paper version of the review, so if you want to get started, you're more than welcome to do so. I think that's it. Anyway, have a wonderful week. We'll talk to you later. Bye.